moves to a more technically relevant body. We had a curious meeting this morning on ICANN, and one of the questions was, why is ICANN having a town hall at the IGF? Was a little bit paranoical for the people who are spend a lot of time on ICANN. Or should it move to a financial?
Some would like it to be forever, some for 10 years, some for 5 years. Those are points of details. But there is absolutely a process, and ISOC is following, monitoring, and trying to influence that process as hard as we can. The second important question that you have raised is about the sustainability and the independence of the IGF. And I think those two questions are linked, because the way you fund the IGF, if it is done through a diversity of sources, financial sources, that will guarantee that it is not captured by one sole group, entity, stakeholder community. What is very unique with the IGF is that its secretariat is independent. The secretariat depends organically, it depends on the UN, DESA, in New York, but functionally, the Secretariat is based in Geneva and it works in an independent way. The agenda of the IGF, and this is absolutely unique in the UN sphere, is developed 100% by the community of stakeholders. This is why the IGF is so unique, and we want it to be stronger. Now, in terms of financial sustainability, and I'm very happy because Raul Echeberria just arrived, and he's been recently elected chair of the IGF Support Association. That will be one new mechanism guaranteeing a diversity of sources, financial sources, contributing to a stronger IGF secretariat and ad hoc initiatives to support the IGF. And I'm thinking of participation of individuals all across the world to global and regional IGFs, and supporting a very important trend that's going on right now, which is the proliferation of national, regional IGFs. This is really the future. So I hope that addresses your question, and maybe we can take another question of an ambassador before we move to this critical question of funding the IGF, and Raul will tell us a little bit about the IGF Support Association. Do we have another question? I think we do.
Hi, my name is Ankush, and I represent the Internet Society Bangalore chapter from Asia Pacific, and I am here for the first time. So I agree with the two questions raised by my fellow investor colleague. But one of the things I would like to see, IGF is definitely an important platform, and over years it has improved. But one thing that concerns me is, like, we have a global IGF, we have a lot of local IGFs, we have national IGFs. How should we converge so that the communication is better and the agenda becomes pretty effective over time? And the learnings from the global IGF goes to the local IGFs, and the local IGFs goes to the global IGF. Thank you.
I will ask Kyle to take this question and maybe also link it to the IGF Support Association. I think the question, please let me know if I'm formulating this correctly, is about the need for stronger coordination between the global, the regional, national, local IGFs. Is that the point? And the need to ensure that there is communication between these different platforms. Was that it? Yes, okay.
Okay. Yeah, so we have, since we say that the IGF model is based on the agenda is totally guided by the stakeholders, that goes valid for the regional IGFs also. So somehow the gap is missing between the global versus the local IGFs.
Okay. Good afternoon. Sorry for the delay in arriving to this meeting. You know how the IGF is. At the end of the week, we don't know exactly how many workshops and meetings we attended, but we know how many kilometers we ran. I was in another very exciting meeting about projects in developing countries around the world that are being supported by the Internet Society. It was also delayed because the previous workshop was running late too, etc. This is a very good question, and in fact, I think that this is a topic that should be discussed much more. What's the interaction between the different layers? It depends on how we see the IGF. If we see the Internet Governance Forum as one thing, that are formed by different pieces, the national level, regional level, and global level, or if we see all these processes things that are happening independently at different levels, but need some kind of communication. I tend to say the IGF in this second way. So I don't think that we need a strong coordination mechanism. What we need is to feed the debates in both ways. We need interaction in the way that the things that are discussed at the local and regional level could feed the discussion at the global level, and also communication ways to be sure that the things that the outcomes and the findings at the global IGF also enrich the discussion at the regional and local level. In the same way it happens. I think it happens, but it doesn't happen in an organized way. I think there is too much work to do on that. But so I don't have I'm sure that you are not very satisfied with my answer. But I think that we have to continue working on that and discussing that. But the meetings are not being held in an isolated way now. So I think that it is working in a reasonable way. But going back to the just let me spend 1 minute saying that we think that the having local IGF, local multi-stakeholder experiences for internet governance, dealing with the local things or national things is very important. Many people say many times that they would like to see an IGF that impacts more directly in the policy making. But we know that the policy making happens 95%, 90% at the national level, not at the international level. So the way to have a more clear impact in the policy making is working in this link. What happened today is that we come to the IGF, we have very good discussions, and when we go back home, we think that we bring with us some important conclusions. But in many cases, we don't have our mechanisms at the national level when we can bring those findings and those outcomes from the IGF to feed the discussion and to adapt the discussion toward the policy making at the national level. I think that if we do that, if we create more IGF-like mechanisms nationally, so we will be achieving what many people want, that is having a higher impact of the IGF in the policy making. And the ISOC chapters are very important for that. And I think that we have to work more on that between ISOC as an organization and all the 100 chapters we have in order to get that our chapters play a more relevant role, as some of them are already doing. I saw Alejandro Pisanti somewhere in the room, and ISOC Mexico is playing an important role in the dialogue that they have created. There are a lot of many experiences where the chapters are very active. We have to channelize that and work more with the chapters in order to empower chapters, help the chapters to have more materials, information, and also we need to understand where we need to understand how we can engage better, and also we have to be also a vehicle for helping to bring the conclusions and the discussions at the national level to the global debate. We have to the funding. The funding is very important in order to have a stable IGF. And a stable IGF is a more independent IGF. So it can fulfill its role without being concerned about the money that it is needed for doing the daily job. So this is very important. And Internet Society and other Internet organizations have been very active since the beginning, funding and support in different ways with human resources and spending time making IGF to be a success. I think we have played a very important role, a crucial role in that. But now we are trying to give a new step. It's not only us providing funding, but also we are trying to explore how to engage more people, bring more people and more organizations on board to contribute with the funding. And so this is the reason because we created this new association, the IGF Supporting Association. There are some organizations that, for different reasons, because for corporate policies or for different reasons, they don't feel comfortable contributing with IGF through the UN mechanism. So we will provide a new vehicle, a new mechanism for giving a way to contribute to IGF. There are individuals that want to contribute, and the UN bureaucracy, as you can imagine, that this size of organization that is UN is not prepared for dealing with small contributions like $25, $50. But if there are people who want to contribute with those amounts, we have to offer something. And this is what the IGF Supporting Association is about. And I expect really, and the service here is one of the persons that have been elected as member of this recently formed executive board of the executive committee of IGF SA. We will be working very hard in the next few days, few weeks, in order to implement the mechanism for helping everybody to do what everybody wants, that is to make their valuable contributions. And we have seen, by the way, already some contributions in the booth. We have a booth, IGF Supporting Association booth. And I made my individual contribution, and I understand that many people, I have said yesterday that we had more than 80 people that had signed to be members of the association immediately after the meeting, the inaugural meeting. So I think that maybe now we have much more members than that. So please join us, but not only join us in making individual contributions, join us in the spirit of working together for ensuring the financial stability of IGF, and also help us to bring other organizations and other people that is able to contribute. The Internet Society will be providing the secretariat for 1 year at least, and until the organization get organized and is able to run their own functions. So that's all. Welcome to the IGF Supporting Association.
Very much, Raul, and I hope that addresses the question of the gentleman in the back of the room. Excellent. I hear we have raised in 24 hours $6,000, and we have 80 members who have joined the IGF Support Association. For individuals today, special price, $25, $100 for organizations. And I do encourage all of you who want to support the IGF and strengthening this very special forum to join the association and to work with Raul. We've talked about strengthening the IGF, the financial aspects, the necessity of having a lively community, and we know that the ISOC community is close to the heart of the IGF community. There's a third aspect, which is what does the IGF produce? The IGF is now 9 years old. It's growing up, and it seems that it's time for this organization to start producing producing outcomes. We don't want this forum to become a negotiating body, certainly not. But delegates who spend money and time to come into these meetings need to take tangible outcomes back home, to be able to share with their governments, their local communities, and make sure that the multi-stakeholder principles that guide the work of the IGF have a chance to spur at the local level. So this takes us to the very specific question of tangible outcomes for the IGF. This year, we're launching a few experimental tracks. We'll see next year, what do we keep, what needs to be fixed. All of you have a chance to go into main sessions and express your wishes on how the work of the IGF, its outcomes, can be corrected, better, more focused. I'd like to ask Désirée, who has a very long working experience with the IGF, to tell us why it's so important for the IGF to produce outcomes. Désirée, please.
Constance, for that very good question. I would like to first say a few comments about the importance of strengthening the IGF, and maybe the best starting point would be to go back and look of what has the CSTD working group on improvements of the IGF recommended a few years back. And one of the 4 recommendations, the very first one, exactly talks about the outcomes, tangible outcomes and recommendations as a way to improve and evolve the IGF. We all know, and Constance has reminded us, that the IGF has been set up in the Tunis agenda as a place to discuss public policy issues pertaining to the internet, but it's not going to turn into a negotiating body. And however, the need to produce outcomes, and especially in this IGF, I think we're already seeing something this week, and that is has been done together with ISOC and other members of other stakeholders, and that is the launch of the best practices. I wonder how many of you in the room have seen the best practice document and the 5 themes that you can comment on. So almost 2/3, which is, just shows how active ISOC is. So the 3 other recommendations of the CST working group on improvement of the IGF and therefore strengthening of the IGF exactly were the topics we already discussed. And one was finding the sustainable funding for the IGF and extending the mandate of the IGFs. But the first one needs to be tackled first, and I think I need to congratulate Constance and others who have taken a lead in setting up the workshops around these 5 topics of best practices that will all feed into the main session at the end of the week. So the IGF, we have also heard from NEC Mundial that the IGF should be strengthened, although we have not been given a precise recipe as to how it has to be done. So we all have to think, and we all have to do it together, put our thinking hats on, and how to improve the dialogue, how to structure the conversation, and how are we going to get closer to achieving these goals that we set up in front of us. And best practice documents is a really good start. It could be also called a good practice, because it's always better, easier to adopt a good practice than the best practice. And I think a lot of case studies could be helped. The Internet Society has produced a lot of good reports on the markets in Africa, and there's a lot of case studies. And I think some of that information could also be reused and probably very adequate for further discussions within various workshops of the benefits of having set up good practice or a best practice in a particular country, and how to move that from a national level to some high-level international public policy space where you would have shared principles and values. As Constance said, I have a long history with the IGF from 2006 and the first IGF meeting when we had 600 people in Athens, and now we have about 3,000 people and maybe 20 workshops, and now we have to cut down from 200 down to 80 and ask a lot of workshop organizers to merge. But I do see the quality of workshops going high, both in emerging issues and as well with some issues that have been on the table for a long time, and one of them being unresolved, the issue of enhanced cooperation. And ISOC has organized a workshop last year in Baku and dedicated a whole day looking at how to advance that dialogue as well. And I think that's something that we also need to think about. Maybe it's worth mentioning what are these five best practices topics we've chosen for those who are not aware. The first one is about developing a meaningful multi-stakeholder participation mechanisms, and there is a draft text there, and you can go online and add your comments. Pretty much it works the way the Net Mundial solicited comments for the shared principle text. There's also the regulation and mitigation of unwanted communications draft up there, and the other three are the establishing and support of CERTs, or computer emergency response centers, which is not something that every nation has. They may have a CCTLD established, working or not working, but maybe not the center. So really improving on the capability and capacity building in those areas in terms of security and stability. And then also the creating an enabling environment for the development of the local content, which is a very important topic, and I think the Internet Society had many successful workshops, and the message getting through, and that's why it's been chosen as one of the best practices also on this list. And the last one is the best practice for the online child protection. So a variety of topics, but I'd really like to open up the floor, I think, to the questions. How could we use best practices, maybe hear your ideas of what other tangible outcomes the IGF can produce, and what other intersessional mechanisms we can put in place, and meetings in between the annual IGF to move the topic forward. I could stop here. I think I'm over 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Désirée. Are there any comments, questions, specifically with regards to the development of outcomes for the IGF? Shubi, please. Introduce yourself before asking the question, please.
My name is Shubi Chaturvedi. I am a member of the MAG. I represent 2 stakeholder communities, media and civil society. I teach at Delhi University in India at a women's college, and I run a foundation called Media for Change. There are just 2 short comments and then probably a suggestion. 2012 was my first IGF at Baku. While we've had great conversations about telecom in India, the conversations about internet governance were only just beginning. Having looked at the IGF, and I had no way of funding or supporting myself, this is a story that I've often heard from emerging countries, emerging economies, developing countries. ISOC offered a $1,500 support, and I have never looked back since. The IGF SA is a very, very important movement to make sure that people who are not in the room, voices which do not get heard, are represented in this amazing and the only one of its kind platform, which is the IGF, which is truly inclusive, transparent, multi-stakeholder, and bottom-up, with the evolving internet ecosystem. And this is a conversation which is very important and close to our hearts in India, China, because the next 2 billion are coming online. With that sense, there's also an issue which looks at challenges and opportunities. And I do want to compliment the ISOC team, and particularly Constance, for pulling this together, because the draft is online and it's open for comments until the 5th of September. The Secretariat has put it online. I urge all of you to engage, comment, and initiate this dialogue, because this has been the constant challenge for the IGF. Is there a takeaway? What do we get from here? It's been 9 years. Is there value? I think this is very, very important value. And ISOC is doing a tremendous job at pulling these people together. So thank you for doing what you do. Désirée, just one quick question. In terms of response and engagement, what happens to people who comment and put in their interventions? Where do they go from there? Do they get published? Are they individual comments that we're looking at? And how is it synthesized? I do believe that's the main session. So if you and Constance could respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to take that question. So the process, as you said, is very important. We've ensured that since the very beginning, it's absolutely open to all stakeholders. The first draft was developed through participation of a group of experts. We have about 80 individuals, 80 experts gathered through virtual communities, one community per theme: spam, certs, multi-stakeholder best practices, local content, online child protection. Once that group came to an agreement, consensus on the current best practices and felt that it was sufficiently documented, the drafts went up. And you're right, we use the exact same tool as Net Mundial, an open platform where the public, anybody can go into the system and add their comments. We will probably be extending the deadline for comments, because with the IGF, many individuals were informed about this opportunity and now want to get more engaged and involved. After the IGF Secretariat will take into account the written comments, but also comments expressed orally during the sessions. So it's important that those of you who are interested in these topics go to the best practice forums, share your opinion, you complement that with written comments. And then the Secretariat will issue probably a next draft. And when we have consensus, because this is the IGF, we're not negotiating a treaty here. When we have consensus, the document will be finalized. But at this stage, we already have important documentation for all of these topics organized on the IGF website, and this is what primarily the community wants. They want to go to place, a website where they can find experts, documentation, and current best practices. So I hope that addresses your question. There's another question, please, in the back.
Okay, my name is Seun Ojedeji from Nigeria. I'm one of the ISOC ambassadors. I think I just want to make a comment when you were saying something about when we have consensus. So I really need to know, how is this consensus, what's going to determine consensus? Is it going to be, who are the people first? Who are the people that will determine the consensus? And what are the components that you actually watch out for to say, okay, there is consensus on each of the paragraphs in the statement? Because during the Net Mundial, the final, some part of the stakeholders observed that what they were expecting was not what they actually finally came out as a final document. So I hope we'll learn from that and see how all the stakeholders can be involved in this new process. So could you kindly define or describe what the consensus in this is going to look like? Thank you.
I'm happy to jump in here. I think one of the main differences with Net Mundial is that we have time. The documents that are shared currently on the IGF website are drafts. They will include comments expressed orally. They will include written comments, of course. And we have 12 months up to IGF Brazil. And when we feel that we have consensus, when we feel that there are no points of difficult negotiations and that we have a common understanding of current best practices, the process will end and we shall move to another topic. I think, again, the fact that we have time ahead of us and that there's no hard deadline will give the communities the flexibility to make sure they have a common understanding of the documents. The other point I wanted to make is that these documents are written by independent individuals who are part of the IGF Secretariat, but the work is led by the community. Anybody can volunteer to be a lead expert, to pick up a topic, to unite a group of stakeholders, experts around him or her, and to develop best practices and to start the work. So this is completely open, multi-stakeholder, and bottom-up in terms of process. I hope that addresses your question. There was another question from a lady with a yellow...
Hi, Alexandra Приходько from Ukraine. I have not the question actually, but the proposition. If we are talking about outcomes of national IGFs, I would like to present you our common initiative with Armenian ISOC to create an ongoing steering committee of national IGF as a platform for practical institutionalization of Net Mundial approach to decision making, and it was our initiative. We created memorandum on such platform, and we received support from Armenian ISOC, and they introduced this idea on their national level. And you also talk about integration of national IGF in global IGF ecosystem, about vertical integration. But I have to say that we need also horizontal integration. And for example, participation in Ukrainian IGF representatives of Armenian ISOC can help a lot to strengthen regional ties and to elaborate a common approach to common problems.
I'm sorry, just to add a few words. I'm Samuel Martirosyan, and I'm representing ISOC chapter of Armenia. Just 2 weeks ago, our government accepted IGF concepts, and ISOC became national responsible to gather multi-stakeholder model, and in November we will have our first local IGF, which will include also governments which accepted all good rules, let's say. And we are happy to start some horizontal procedures with Ukraine. We'll see what will happen later. Thank you.
Maybe because these two questions are tied, I think, in terms of themes, and then we'll move to the gentleman over there. It's about, and you as well, it's about the importance of organizing and communication between the global and the different IGF. There's one point that we emphasize often is that there's no hierarchy. When we talk about integration into the IGF system, I would prefer that we talk simply about communication between these different layers of IGF, different layers of dialogues, multi-stakeholder dialogues. Raul, I think you wanted to add something.
Yes, that's the example that you are mentioning is exactly what we were talking about before. So ISOC chapters are in very well positioned as an organization for being the convener of dialogues like this one, because many times it's difficult to have a dialogue between the private sector, government, but ISOC chapters usually are formed by people that come from different stakeholder groups. So it's a neutral organization, not neutral because we have our values and our vision and we defend our many things, but neutral in terms of the organization. So it is excellently positioned for being the convener. And this is what is happening in many countries. I'm glad to see that we have another example for using in the future. Please pass updated us about how it evolves, and good luck with it. Please let us know how we can help.
Thank you, Raul. We've reached the end of the hour, but we have two, well, let's say three. If we could take those three questions, and Walda will then jump in to help us wrap up. So I think the gentleman...
this is Sudip Ramaji. I'm one of the ambassadors this year. This is my second IGF. Last year I was here on a partial fellowship by ISOC, and to be here representing Nepal and voicing out the issues, it is great, and to see a lot of people with the same fire and with the same issues. It's quite relieving, I must say, because at surface level, there are big meanings, big definition, but when it comes down to practical reality, it's completely different. It's different than what the meanings and definitions are and what reality is on the ground. But still, I have a question. A lot of new organizations and associations and ideologies are coming up. So where does ISOC stand in terms of understanding, practice in terms of values? So how are we going about?
That's a very good question. We'll take the two other questions.
Yes, I'm Walid Al-Sakaf from Yemen's ISOC Yemen chapter, and you see here we are the biggest delegation from Yemen, 3 in 1 table. And what we'd like to say is that we actually are in harmony and support of what Raul has mentioned. It's like almost identical to what we have gone through in Yemen, because all factions are more or less in rivalry or in some sort of mistrust. Only the chapter was able to bring them together. And it looks like we have positioned ourselves with the help of ISO to be the broker of all agreements and perhaps even a forum in the near future. The Yemeni National Forum is one envisioned initiative. Mr. Fahmy had given a presentation at a couple of weeks ago in Yemen, and he actually found out that the examples from the region have somewhat influenced how we communicate internally. So there is a connection. There's the Arab Internet Governance Forum, of which he is actually a member of the MAG. So you see here, we already see the collaboration happening from bottom up. But what we lack right now is a little bit more information and knowledge of how to garner support. Because as a country that is more or less in economic crisis, as you may say, we find that without proper economic funding, we may not be able to foresee or achieve what we have envisioned. Part of it may not be necessarily direct funding, but connections to those who can be funders, donors that are in the region, private sector perhaps, and so forth. So this is what we need to work on in the next future, and I'd like to get your views on that.
Thank you very much for that question. And Shiva, please. And then we will ask Walda to help us wrap up.
Siva Subramanian from Internet Society India, Chennai. I just want to refer to a point mentioned by Carlos as an ISOC IGF ambassador, and he was talking about an ICANN session this morning where a certain question was raised as to why ICANN is having this discussion at the IGF. And what I want to say is that he mentioned the question but did not talk about the answer that was given to his question at the session, that the topic of ICANN accountability is very broad, is of considerable importance to the Internet, so it needs to be discussed in a broader forum like Internet Governance Forum. So since he mentioned that question, I want to mention that answer as well. Another thing he went on to add that a certain issue should be taken to the plenipotentiary for discussion. I want to know why such a point comes up. That too from a first-time ambassador, and I have a very strong answer, so I don't want to give an answer. So I would rather request one of the panelists to give a moderate answer to such a question as a certain discussion should feed into the ITU plenipotentiary.
Okay, we've reached the end of the hour a few minutes ago. So what I would propose that we do is perhaps ask Walda to help us address those final comments, questions. I heard a question about values. I heard a question about the need for support in development of local IGFs. And I've heard a question about the importance of having open discussions about critical issues, including the IANA transition. Walda, please, and help us as well conclude this discussion with all our members. Thank you.
I thought you were asking me to take on the easy job here. That clearly isn't the case. I would say I have maybe 2 minutes, so please forgive me if I skip a lot of very important details. This has been a very good session. It shows how engaged our community is, and certainly we want to encourage that engagement. We've covered a lot of territory here. Let me see if I can touch on the high points. The first one is I think we are all in agreement that it's important that we look at the long-term sustainability and a strengthened IGF. We have a lot of good questions about and good ideas about how to do that, but I haven't heard anyone raise a question about whether to do that. That's the first point. The second point, and we can thank Carlos for getting us started on this, is how do we ensure that we have the political stability that we need and the financial stability, and how do we avoid capture in the latter? There was discussion about that. I think certainly how we avoid capture in terms of the political aspects is through a very vigorous multi-stakeholder approach, and by ensuring that more and more stakeholders are able to participate. And thank you for those who recognize the efforts that ISOC has been making there. We hope to continue to make that, including through the IGF Supporting Association, that will also contribute to more participation. The way we avoid capture is financially is by having diverse sources. And so if I can pick up the pitch that we've heard repeated here and do it with enthusiasm, I've paid my $25, and I hope that all of you will get involved and pay your $25, and then you'll go back to your associations and organizations and see if we can get even more, because this is the future of the Internet Governance Forum. And I think that we agree the Internet Governance Forum is a very important aspect of the future of the Internet. We talked about different ways to strengthen the IGF. One of them certainly is making sure that we are engaging all of those in the community who we can engage, including ISOC members, and thanks to Izumi, the AC members and our organization members. There are a number of ways for all of us and all of you to engage, and there are a number of ways for you to help us help you get stronger at that. Certainly facilitating strong local and regional IGFs is another way of doing it. And again, we look to you because you are the local and the regional presence for the Internet Society. You can tell us what we can be doing to help there as well. In participating very actively now and between now and Brazil, and I would say and in Brazil and beyond, in facilitating the development of best, or as Constance says, even good practices, and how those can be brought home and made useful in a variety of ways. And also providing other ideas to the people on the MAG and in these sessions of how we can further strengthen the IGF. I'm going to stop there. I know there are open questions, and I've missed a number of you and what you said, but I hope that synthesizes the high points here. Thank you.
Very much, Walda, and thank you to Izumi, Bob, Raul, Désirée, thank you for your participation, and thank you to our ambassadors, chapter delegates, individual members, org members who are here today with us. Thank you very much, and we'll be seeing you throughout the IGF week.